guys, and welcome to today's Bible journaling video. So we're going to be using our 8x10 gel press plate and some acrylic paints and a Crafter's Workshop stencil to start this out. And you can see I'm just applying my paints just randomly all over. And then I'm going to be using a smaller brayer so that I can kind of try to keep my colors as independent as possible and cleaning my brayer off in between, just so I can keep those colors very clean and not getting them really muddy. And then you can see when I lift it off, I just get that great kind of cobblestone look that is kind of reinforcing the idea of what I'm doing for this particular Bible journaling page. And then I'm just going to grab my archival ink, and I have this hand carved stamp that I did years ago that it's kind of like the outline of bricks. And I'm just adding that in there just to, again, reinforce this this idea that I'm doing for this project. So we are actually in Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 through 27. You can see there, I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of white paint. I really wanted those colors to pop, so I kept my paint my really light. And then I'm going to actually flip it over into my interleaved Bible, and it's on an acrylic block that's actually from Joggles. And I kind of gave myself some space here to read my scripture. So we're going to leave that just sitting there for a minute. And we're going to read the scripture starting at verse 24 that says, "Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. When the rain falls and the flood comes, the winds blew and beat down the house, but it did not fall because it was founded on the rock. And everyone who hears the words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it." So now that it's ready, I've just kind of peeled it up, and you can see I've got that stone texture, and then I've got that little bit of brick kind of peeking through there, and I'm just going to dry it before I move to the next step. I wanted to intermix that idea of rocks and bricks because I felt like it really worked with the scripture, with the idea of building your house on the rock, and then the idea of building, we build with bricks typically. And so I really wanted to kind of put those two things together about God being the rock and then us building on top of the rock. So that's why I'm kind of blending those two ideas together with my backgrounds. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull out one of my printables. This is my Hope is Built on printable, almost said principle. And I'm just going to cut out the brick shape that is on the side and just give it a nice little trimmy trim so that it fits on the edge kind of where I would like it to be. I'm going to speed through this little cutting thing because no one wants to sit there and watch me cut out little bricks forever. I'll put a link to my printables down below that are in my Etsy shop. So I'm going to, normally I would use a matte gel medium, but I am out and I have not had time to replace it yet. So I'm just going to be using some good old matte Mod Podge. I tend not to like the glossy Mod Podge in my Bible because I feel that it gets tackier and stays tackier and can glue my pages together. So if I ever use Mod Podge in my Bible, I try to stick with the matte version because I just find it just works better for this kind of project. And you can also see that I'm putting the Mod Podge over the entire page and not just over the paper that I'm trying to adhere down. I do that because if I want to add mediums on top, if it's a clear coat of that Mod Podge, then all my mediums are going to react the same versus if I'm trying to put a medium over the Mod Podge on one side and just the regular acrylic paint on the other. And so I always try to kind of keep my base even so that I get just a cohesiveness between the different mediums that I choose to use. So I am loving this background. I think it is awesome. It has that kind of grunginess that I like, but still the bright colors that I also like. Took a little hot minute to get the, no pun intended, to get it cleaned off or dried up. And then I was originally just going to put some words, but I kind of wanted to go a little more, maybe a little bougie on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and use my white paint to kind of fill in some squiggly circles, I guess, places, because I decided I wanted to kind of just have some fun and paint some flowers on this, kind of that juxtaposition of hard rocks um, and hard bricks with the kind of lightness and femininity of flowers. I kind of like the juxtaposition of those two ideas. So I started with a white base and then added a pink to it. The white was just to give that pink a little bit more base to sit on, so it wouldn't be just that bright background and the bricks. And then you can see I have done what's called double dip my brush. That just means I'm putting one corner in a dark color and one corner in a light color, and just using that to just create the depth in my flowers kind of as I go. It's a technique that is super easy to learn and just lets you be able to create those depths and stuff without thinking about it too crazy much. Um, you guys know me. I'm definitely a go big or go home kind of girl. And so I, of course, go in and add more layers. But even just this technique by itself, if I finished this flower and left it, they still would be absolutely gorgeous. And so, again, it's just called a double dip technique. It's where you put one corner in a brighter color and one color or darker and one in a lighter. And now I'm just going back in and just adding just again, a darker color, so a third color. But like I said, not necessary. It would have been just fine the way it was. It's definitely a technique that I suggest for anyone who's wanting to add florals and that kind of thing to their Bible journaling pages, because it gives you that instant depth, that instant light, and it's just a quick and easy way to add flowers to really any project. So definitely give that a try. And if you've ever tried it, or if you try it for the first time, make sure to come back and leave me a comment and let me know. Or even better, leave me a link if you do a video on it, because I think that would be pretty cool to see. And before I go in and add my next layers. I'm just hitting it again with that heat gun because I want those colors I have on there, those lights and darks, to stay lights and darks. And now I'm just going in with a white and just kind of hitting where the highlighted parts would be on my flower, and just keeping it very opaque. That's not the right word. Keeping it transparent. So I'm not trying to make really, really harsh white lines. I'm really just trying to add just almost where the light would catch. And so I'm kind of going to do a very similar technique with my leaves. It's a little bit harder because I goofed up and I didn't put that white base down first like I did on my flowers. So my greens are having a little bit harder time popping against my background. But with this technique, always, it's just a matter of just play with it. Just keep adding your layers. And just kind of brushing with them and working with them wet works best with this technique. So you can see it's just a bright green or a medium green in the middle, and then going back with that double dip technique. I was playing around here to see if I liked doing the colors individually better, and I realized I really didn't. It was just a hot mess that I just had to fix later. I have no problem showing you guys my mistakes. That's life, right? I think we as Christians sometimes hide our failures when it's like, we all have fallen and we are all fallen short and we've all failed. So it's okay. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with failing as long as you get back up, ask forgiveness, move on, and learn from it. So I learned from it that next time I'm going to put white down before I try to do this, because it would make it much easier to make those leaves next time. So I'm just hitting those with that heat gun, and I'm really going back in and kind of, like I said, learned my lesson, doing that technique again, trying to get those to match the other ones. And so it kind of took a hot minute, but it's all good. I like it. I think they turned out great, especially when I don't typically paint florals. So anytime I can kind of play with something new or maybe remember something I haven't done in a long time, florals are not typically my forte when it comes to painting. But like I said earlier, I really wanted to kind of juxtapose juxtapose the those kind of opposite ideas of we are this beautiful flower, but we are built on this rock of Jesus, and we build with bricks, and we're sturdy, um, but we're still beautiful and fragile. And then I'm just going back in with a brown Faber-Castell pen, and the Pit Artist pen. This is Raw Umber 180. Just umping up those little shadows a little bit. And I kind of felt like a little bit like the flowers were kind of hovering over the background. So I decided to add a little bit of a shadow around it just to kind of make it feel like it's part of the background again, instead of kind of doing that hovering thing. And I feel like adding just a little bit of shadow kind of recesses it back into the project just a little bit. And I kind of like that. It worked for me. And now the part that kind of takes forever. I am kind of spacing out my words, trying to figure out where I wanted them to be. I was originally going to just use the words that come with my printable, which say, my hope is built on nothing less. But since I was using that rock theme and that kind of thing, I wanted to instead do the idea of my house is built on the rock, to more convey the scripture, that reference that we were using. And so I'm just using this. This is one of my favorite stamp sets, and I think it's like a Paper Studio stamp set. So I'm sure I got it like half price, so it was like $6 or $7. But it's just multi-purpose. It's kind of that old-fashioned typewriter typeset, which I happen to love. And so I am just placing my letters. You kind of saw earlier, I did go in with a pencil and just lightly draw out where I roughly thought my letters needed to go. That was just mainly so I could get that spacing correctly, and so that I would know about kind of where I wanted it to stagger, so I didn't end up with like stuff in a perfect straight line, because that doesn't always work for me. So you can't see off screen either a little bit. I'm stamping, putting my letters on, stamping, and then I'm actually stamping off my letters a little bit on that craft paper underneath to make sure that my letters are aligned correctly. I think, especially when you're doing something really long like this, it's always great to do a little test print. So just keep a scrap piece of paper somewhere while you're doing something like this, and just give it a little test just to make sure that your letters line up, because sometimes it's hard to tell when you're putting it on an acrylic block to make sure that they're in line and that kind of stuff. So I've got my complete title done, and then I'm just going back in and not erasing all of my pencil lines, just the ones that are, to me, were super noticeable. And then I'm going back in with a white jelly roll, just the white, and I'm just adding kind of that highlight to make it look like, normally if it was a white letter, it would be a black highlight or black shadow so that it would pop. But since I'm using black letters, I went in with a white just to give it some emphasis and make it stand out a little bit more from the background. I think this just adds a really great kind of finishing touch to the project and gives it just some pop. It almost gives it like it's like glowing kind of thing. And so I kind of like that. I think all letters need a little oomph, a little sass, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. So I've got my left mostly done, but I want to make sure I am emphasizing the scriptures that we're using on the right. So I'm taking that same yellow I used in my background and just watering it down a little bit, and just mainly kind of using it as a highlighter to make that scripture convey kind of to the other side. And then this is a white Posco pen, and I'm just adding some more highlights to it just to give a little oomph, because it's me. More mo better. makes me happy. I don't know. And then rather than highlight it in black, which I thought would be kind of harsh for what I was kind of trying to do, I actually went with the white and highlighted it. And then I'm kind of just adding a little doodle there, once again, just to kind of emphasize the two ideas. To a little bit of cohesion. So just a little similar flower, some little leaves, and then underlining there, adding the date, and we are done. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Have an awesome day.